Why do you seem so scared? All I wanted to do was play with you.
Welcome to Terror Tracks, hosted by best-selling horror author Jack Pierce. We publish new episodes every Monday at 2 a.m. EST. Go to terrortracks.com/shop if you would like to support the show, and follow us on social media at terrortracks.com/follow. Enjoy the show.
Welcome back. In this episode, we get to find out what happened on that train bound for Norcastle with Chapter 2 of Under a Morning Star. After that, there will be a review of Are You Afraid of the Dark? The Tale of the Lonely Ghost, about a little girl who's trapped in a mirror in a house that's for sale. I hope you're ready to enter the world once again of Under a Morning Star. I'll see you in a moment.
Chapter 2. Norcastle has changed. The train stopped. Attendants and staff walked around like nothing happened. The creature was gone, and the red LED sign said, "Welcome to Norcastle." And then he fell right on his ass. His wife called him a fat sack of shit and told him to get out of the floor before he put a hole in it. An attendant said, laughing, "Were they there before?" I snickered and shook my head. The rest of the staff laughed as he continued to tell another story. I stepped off the train into Norcastle Station. It was abandoned, and thick fog covered its corridors. I walked along looking at the map of the town and advertisements that had not been taken down. Ads for the old movie theater that had burned down, along with Charlie's Tavern, Valentine's Hardware, Hall's Drugstore, and Owen's Realty. Norcastle was a quiet town before the murders. The cops were fat from donuts and coffee up at Shoemaker's Diner and probably couldn't catch a perp on an electric wheelchair. Everything here was family-owned. The town's history stretched back over 100 years, and the businesses had existed for at least the last 70. I walked through the station feeling nostalgic for the days when me and Mikey used to play here. It was a different time then. The murders started when I was around 15. At that point, Mike was long gone, and I was on my way out. I walked to the front of the station and found an office where an attendant would usually hand out flyers for sites and activities here. Papers laid along the desks, old brochures and catalogs. I picked up one of the pamphlets for Owen's Realty. They owned most of the houses in town except for those owned by Mr. Valentine. Kendall Owen was a con man, to put it lightly. He would talk you up into buying a house that should have been condemned for an incredibly inflated price after a half-assed renovation. He bought a house for $20,000, threw some paint on the turd, fix a few things, and sell it for $175,000. The homes would look good for about 6 months. If you ever went back to him, he would say, "All sales are final." It's not like people had much of a choice anyway. A newspaper laid under the brochures. It was dated August 12, 2040. Town hall meeting ends in bloodbath. A town council meeting ended in a firefight with police. James Remachek, 45 years old, opened fire on city council members last Friday. Remachek repeatedly screamed the name Ravel. Remachek was gunned down by local police after a rampage that took the lives of 15 council members. There will be a funeral for all who have been lost on the 16th. Family night will be held on August 15th at Lakefield Funeral Home on West Broad Street. Ravel? I didn't know all the details, but I knew the followers were nuts. It gave me pause that a man from my old town would kill for the Ravel cult. They were a nuisance back in Drova, but they were never seen as a considerable threat. Sure, they'd flood a part of town and the crime rate would shoot up, but ritualistic murder was rare. The last case I dealt with that was the Dr. Murphy case. He was a real nightmare. A nightmare I hoped I'd never have to revisit. I knew Mr. Remachek. He was always an oddball. Strange as could be, but I never saw him as a threat. Most of the locals referred to him as the town madman. He wandered around town a lot. Every time someone spoke to him, he would look down and throw his hands up, babbling to himself. From what I understood, he was schizophrenic. I never knew for sure, but he never had a history of violence. I hailed a taxi at the entrance of the train station and told the driver to take me to 1356 East 3rd Street, my childhood home. The driver was an older black man. His gray hair hid under an old brown beret. "So, what are you doing here, sir?" the driver asked. "I work for the SBI. We're investigating the murders here," I said. "That was a long time ago. Very few come here anymore. But those that do appreciate the lift. My name is Lawrence, by the way. I'm Detective Levin. You can call me Rick. It's been a while since any police came here. I was starting to wonder if this town would ever pick back up. Any plans to revive it?" "Not that I know of. Then again, the state wants that tourist money, so they might gentrify it. Probably put a shopping mall here and try to bring it all back, I guess." "I don't think that's a good idea." "Neither do I. But what has been going on here?" "Not much. Just a ghost town, lots of strange occurrences. I give people rides in and out of town. The stories I hear keep me going. Once the day is over, I go back home and mind my own business. It's safer that way." "Yeah." We drove downtown. Places I felt nostalgic for were boarded up, some burned to the ground. Strangely, the rubble still simmered with red-hot coals. According to the papers back in Drova, this place had been a ghost town for quite some time. Drova Times-Dispatch was the main newspaper. It chronicled everything in the state, and Norcastle rarely came up. I studied the case files in my spare time and looked in the papers often for updates. Even though I grew to hate this place, I was always fascinated by its ghostly allure. "Hey, by any chance, have you heard of something called the Red Reaper around here?" I asked. Lawrence looked at me through the rearview mirror. "Yeah, he's been here for years, jumping across rooftops, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. First sightings of him, or it, depending on what you believe, was 6 or 7 years ago. Have you ever talked to the guy?" "Oh, heavens no, and I don't wish to either. A passenger just the other day said they saw him, though. They said they heard the sound of crows squawking." Lawrence pulled up in front of my old house. It felt strange to be back. Its shimmer had left it long ago. It was a 2-story house, painted white with a chain-link fence, and weeds had overgrown it. The shutters were trashed, and most of the windows were broken. It was sad to see it in such disrepair. Even as a child, I had some good memories here. My door was locked. Nobody had lived here since I left, by the look of it. I heard the sound of laughing children next door. Mike and his brother Tommy were playing wiffle ball. They had not aged a day. They both looked like they were still 10 years old. They were the only 2 kids I played with since Mom was a homebody. They laughed, joked, and played like most kids their age. Loud noises came from Mike's house. The sound of dishes breaking, something hitting the wall, and the sound of crying. The cry of a middle-aged woman. I walked up to Mike and asked, "Hey, what's going on in there?" "Mom and Dad are fighting again," he said. The kids vanished with a quiet whisper. Where did they go? I never knew Mike's dad well. He died when I was around 15. His death was always suspicious to me. He seemed healthy, and I never saw him leave the house. I didn't know it as a child, but his dad was an alcoholic, and he beat his wife often. He was usually passed out drunk with a bottle of liquor on the floor next to his chair. Now that I reflected on it, it all seemed so clear. His mom was always quiet around us. She never seemed happy. She rarely said anything more than, "Run along and play." I imagined if she said anything more, it would have agitated him into another one of his beating sprees. In a morbid kind of way, I was glad he was dead. At least she had gotten some peace. I had dealt with many situations just like the one Linda dealt with. Domestic violence cases were the worst to deal with. A crying woman who had been beaten black and blue by her husband would call us, then beg us not to arrest their man. Even when we did arrest them, we would get called out the next day for the same thing. It was a never-ending cycle, a complete catch-22. On one hand, if we pressed charges on the husband, the wife would get mad. If we didn't, he would keep beating her. The worst was the one poor woman we had seen at least 5 times in a month. She was beaten to death by her man. and we never caught him. The things people will do for love.
All right, welcome back. This week I'm going to be doing a review of the second episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark, called The Tale of the Lonely Ghost. Will it be better than The Tale of the Phantom Cab? Let's find out. So, I went into this one a lot more hopeful because the thumbnail of the video showed a very, very scary screenshot of like this little girl that was trapped in a mirror. And to me, that's pretty terrifying when you look at a mirror and see someone staring back at you that's not you. That's pretty scary to me. This episode did not disappoint at all. It was much better than the Phantom Cab, but it did have some issues that held it back from being an all-time classic as well. And that thing is that I'm starting to see a pattern where there's one character who is perfect and innocent and maybe a little bit silly or stupid, but they're really harmless, and then the other character is just a dick to them the entire episode. So remember in the last episode where the little brother was just so obnoxious and he almost ruined the episode, while the brother was the redeeming quality that basically kept telling him stop being so annoying more or less the entire episode? This is the opposite of that. You have these two cousins. I'm guessing they're cousins. I don't think they ever say if they're sisters or cousins or how they know each other. But anyway, this girl goes to a house while her parents go off on some type of vacation excursion or whatever. And one's name is Beth and one's name is Amanda. And Beth is this redheaded girl that is awful the entire show. She is horrible to Amanda. Like the entire episode, she is just obnoxious to the point where it makes you almost hate the episode because of her. So if you remember in the last one, it was really held back by that kid's acting. And in this one, it's held back by them really trying to give you a villain that didn't really need to be in the episode and was so over the top it was kind of cringe in a lot of spots. But let's get on with the story and you'll see what I mean. It more or less starts with Beth telling Amanda that if she wants to hang out with her friends that she has to clean up her room and also stay overnight in the haunted house next door. And Amanda's like, okay, fine, I guess I'll stay over there, because she wanted to make some friends that summer. And pretty much the entire time this little scene is going on, Beth is just being really snooty and obnoxious and just like, ugh. I just hated this character. I'm sure the actress is a sweet woman in real life now, and I know she's probably older than me now, but good God, I hated her the entire episode, and it was starting with this scene. Anyway, fast forward to a little bit later, there's an old lady that comes up the stairs, and she looks a lot like Dahlia from Silent Hill, and even almost has like the same sort of mannerisms as Dahlia, if you remember her. Like the crazy witch woman that was Alessa's mother, I think. And Beth screams at her saying, if you touch her, I'll never let you touch my things again. And I'm just like, that's your grandmother. Just come on. That's your grandmother. You know, you don't yell at your granny like that. I was getting mad at this point because I was just, this poor old lady was just coming up the stairs, just minding her own business. And this thing that I can't say because this show is safe for work. If I could go on an unfiltered rant, I would, but I'm trying to stay away from the explicit tag. This woman drove me crazy the entire episode with her constant nagging and just rudeness and just the facial expressions and just everything. This woman was terrible. And it's been like 3 days and I'm still not over it. That's how bad this character is. Because with the kid in the first one, it would have made me never watch it again. If I saw this one in order and saw that girl throughout the episode, I probably would have hated the show and just said it was the worst TV show of all time. This character is awful. I'm gonna keep moving because I'm trying to not say anything explicit. Trying to keep this safe for work so you can listen to it while you're at work or with kids in the car or something, because I know a lot of people like to listen to podcasts when they go places. I might do an unfiltered rant one day about this character. I just can't stand her. And it gets even worse at the end of the episode. You'll see why. Let's keep going. So the grandmother is played by this woman named Sheena Larkin, who is one of the best actresses in the entire show. This woman is wonderful. She really does save the episode, and she barely has any lines. You can just see from this poor woman's facial expressions, the way she was so timid, her body language, everything. She is incredible. I love this woman. And I remember seeing her in a different episode called The Tale of the Silver Sight, which was, I think it was like a 3-parter that they did, way later in like season 7 or something. And she was incredible in that too. That woman needs an Oscar. She is that good as Nana in this one little episode where she barely has any screen time or lines. I just want to reach out and hug this woman. She was so convincing. She made me feel terrible. She made me feel terrible watching this. If you can't tell, this episode made me upset. Mainly because the woman has done nothing wrong to anybody, at least in this particular episode. She's just an old lady who lost her daughter. And you have this girl upstairs who just yells at her and screams at her and acts like she's just a piece of... And it just bugs me. It's almost like when you see someone yelling at an animal, like an innocent animal or a child or something. A little kid just playing along and someone just comes up and just like starts screaming at him or slapping him or something. It gave me that same reaction. So it got me really upset, and I need to calm down for a second and get back to the plot. Maybe that's the best actor in the world. Maybe that little obnoxious girl really was an incredible actress. Maybe she's the sweetest woman on earth and she just really got into that character, but gotta keep going. Sheena Larkin, if you ever hear this, I love you, and I hope you've had a wonderful career since then. You really are incredible as these actors, because that's the thing. She is one of those type of actresses that doesn't need a lot of lines. She doesn't need much of anything. You just put her in that spot and you just believe it and you feel for her. And this is a kid's show that's got me this wound up. That's how good she is. Anyway, so one thing that I noticed throughout the episode was the girl Beth that I've been yelling about for the last 5 minutes probably reminded me a whole lot of Buzz from Home Alone. You remember him from Home Alone? It was like the guy that was like the ugly older brother that had the really ugly fat girlfriend, and he was the one that like ate all of Kevin's pizza, and he was just a dick, and he was really obnoxious and annoying, and he was just mean for no reason at all. That's the exact same vibe I got from that girl. She literally was the female Buzz, but about 10 times more infuriating. Anyway, so Beth tells her the story before she goes to stay in the house that night, where it's a story of a little girl who was unable to speak, and the girl was getting bullied, so she ran back home and locked herself in her room, and she just died for no reason. They didn't say why she died or what happened to her. She just went up there and she just died. And there's an actress in the background, which I immediately noticed. There's a cool little bit of trivia for you. And her name is Bethany Nurse, who is a great actress as well. Little black girl in the background. If you watch the episode, that's how you can tell who it is. And she has one line that made me kind of fanboy just a little bit. And she says, maybe she was deaf. And the reason that gets me is because much later in the series, like a couple of seasons ahead of this, there's this awesome episode called The Tale of the Closet Keepers about these aliens that are trying to capture kids and put them in their human zoo or something like that for their own aliens. And she plays the main character who is deaf, and that's how she's able to overcome the aliens. And that was really, really cool. And I'm not sure if they remembered that one throwaway line and just, made something out of it. But I just saw that and I heard her. I'm like, wait a minute. She was in an episode where she played a deaf girl. And that just gripped me and I loved it. So that was a great line that really caught me and made me smile just watching that. So then Beth confesses that it was all a setup and that she lied and that none of the other girls did the initiation after Amanda goes in the house by herself. And if you think that we're going to have a great payoff where Beth is just going to get it and she's just going to die horribly or she's just going to get completely ruined, just keep listening. Just keep listening. I'm just saying, keep listening. It'll be okay. You can grit your teeth and grip the steering wheel all you want. I know I am. So she goes up to the little girl's room and she hears this knocking on the closet door. And there's only one door in and there's a little closet and it has a little mirror on it. And she hears this knocking. And she looks in the mirror and she can see the letters "Help Me" that were scribbled on the wall. Now, this was a callback I believe, to The Shining, where they had the word red rum, which was murder. So that was a neat little touch that they added that sort of bit to it. But anyway, she looks at the wall, seeing it says whatever the backwards of help me is, and then looks back at the mirror, and all of a sudden the mirror turns black and there's this little girl in a white dress, and it is terrifying. Oh my God. It creeped me out so bad that I had to take a break. It was that great of a shot. That was just, wow. Just the way they shot it and the music and the girl screaming, it was nuts. So Amanda runs out of the house, goes back home, and Beth's mama is mad because she thought that Amanda had scribbled all over the walls and she's been trying to sell the house. So she sends Amanda and Beth over to that house again to clean up the wall. Because of course the mother doesn't believe in the ghost story, and I mean, who would really? So there's a good little plot bit in there that the mother didn't believe them, because you'll see something later that is a quite interesting callback to that point. So they go back over to the house, and the entire room where the little girl was has "help me" written all over it. So right as they go in there and they put their buckets down, this is during the day. The last thing was during the night. So I was thinking, well, they're just going to scrub the walls and nothing's going to happen. But that's not what happened. The mirror changes to this room that's full of toys and different stuff, and it somehow entices Beth to walk towards the mirror, and as she puts her hand on the mirror, she basically gets sucked into the mirror. And then the little girl comes out of the mirror and walks real slow up to Amanda. And she's screaming and hollering and screeching, let her out, because the door is locked. And the little girl holds up this little pendant and just looks at Amanda. And it turns out the pendant has a little picture of Nana inside of it for some reason. So Amanda sees the little girl and takes the pendant from her, and the little girl still isn't saying anything. But Amanda takes this as a clue that the little girl wants to see Nana. So Amanda runs next door, looking everywhere for Nana, and sees her from the second-story window about to get into a car. This part really upset me. What happened was, because of Beth being so cruel to her grandmother, or whatever Nana means in Canada, I'm just going to guess grandmother, because she was so cruel to this innocent poor woman who had never done anything to her, from what I can understand, just a scared old lady. She had packed her things and she was going to move away because she said that she wasn't wanted anymore. I was hot when I heard that line. How can you be like that to people? But anyway, it's almost over, thank God, because this episode did really rattle me in the wrong ways. She leads Nana over to the haunted house, and the entire time you can see Nana's crying and saying, no, I can't go back there. Too many memories, I can't. And you just feel horrible for this woman who's just been put through all this torture between the way that Beth treated her and the way that she lost her daughter and all of this other stuff. But she eventually drags this poor old woman up to the bedroom where the little girl is, and Nana sees the little girl just standing there smiling at her. And Nana realizes that the little ghost is her daughter that died, because one way or another, I guess Nana had moved and the girl had went back up to her room to hide, and Nana didn't know she was there. And she just died. Or maybe she died of something that you can't explain because it's a kid's show. But either way, she died, and her mother thought she just disappeared and no one ever found her. So they meet in the middle of the room. She hugs the little girl, and the little girl points at the mirror and is just really excited. And Nana says, you want me to go with you? And they both walk toward the mirror, and they both go inside the mirror together. And then on the other side, you see the little girl dressed in like a dress that looks like it was from like the 30s or 40s, and her Nana is young again, or younger, playing with the girl, and they're both happy. So at least Nana had a good ending. Then the mirror goes back to being a regular mirror, and Beth is stuck inside the closet, banging on the door, and Amanda makes her apologize, and she ends up taking over the group as their leader, and I guess Beth just becomes a subordinate or something, I don't know. But nothing bad happened to Beth at all, and that leads me to my final rating. And the summary of what I want to say about this episode. My overall rating for this is a 7 out of 10. This episode was a huge improvement over the Phantom Cab in pretty much every way. The atmosphere, the music, the plot, the acting, everything was much, much better. It was more straightforward, it was consistent, and it was a straight line linear plot from start to finish, everything connected. It worked perfectly. The plot was great. The only thing that holds it back, which should be obvious by now, is Beth is so obnoxious and so hateable that I wish she had an ending where something actually happened. Or they could have just written her out of the episode entirely, because she had no real reason to be there beyond getting the girl to go in the house and see the scary girl. You could have literally had it, and they've done it in other episodes later in the show, where the girl would have just seen maybe the little girl in the window, like staring at her, and she went and saw her for curiosity or some other reason. I mean, I could have come up with something where we didn't need Beth in this episode. That girl, my God. And I know people were probably saying, this is a kid's show. This is a kid's show. You can't kill a kid in a kid's show. Yeah, you can, because there are plenty of them that get killed in this series. I mean, not every episode has a happy ending, and a lot worse happens to these kids, but I guess it's early in the show, so you can't have a kid die or have them get trapped in something horrible. But it just felt extremely unsatisfying with that ending, that Beth never really got her comeuppance at all. Nana got what she always wanted. She's back with her daughter. Beth is still going to be her and probably going to be just as moody and aggressive as she was before. And nothing changed. The end. 7 out of 10. Major improvement over the last one, and honestly, I think that the one you're probably all waiting for is on the next episode. In the next episode of Terror Tracks, I am going to cover the tale of Laughing in the Dark. We get to finally look at the episode about Zebo, the show's probably most iconic villain of all time, and one that actually did inspire a scene or two from Under a Morning Star. But does that mean that the whole episode is good? You'll have to find out next week on the next episode of Terror Tracks. Sweet dreams, everyone.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to follow us, go to terrortracks.com/follow. Also, please check out our Patreon, where you can get cool merch, writing lessons, and other awesome rewards starting at $5 a month at patreon.com/terrortracks. See you next week. Goodbye for now.